26th. It is now 5:31 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order. With respect to the consent agenda, has everyone had an opportunity to review? Is there any items you would like to see removed at this time? If not, we could entertain a motion. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I will move the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Very good. And just for the record, couple empty seat on either side of me here. Councillor Hoekstra will not be joining us this evening. Councillor Hibbs had let me know earlier she had a previous commitment and would be a few moments late. So she will be joining us as soon as she can. And then for the overall agenda, any items there to add or change? Chief Administrative Officer Gowdy, go ahead.
I was just going to request that a councillor would consider making a motion to add this as a request for decision. This is RFI 587, I believe, that I'm holding, which is the capital project update that was requested at the last meeting, or discussed, I should say. And I'd like to submit it for your information under requests for decision.
Very good. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. No, I was just going to do the suggest doing that what CEO Gotti has just done.
So you would like that added under 6.5?
Sure, that sounds
And
good.
call it capital project update.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I see no additional items, so we could have a motion for the overall agenda, please. Actually, before we do that, I would ask Councillor Hibbs if there was any agenda-related items at this time. Very good. So you can proceed with that motion then. Whoever, go ahead, Councillor Connick.
Did we get one for the consent agenda or?
That's completed.
Okay,
This is for the overall agenda.
Yes, I'll make that motion to accept the agenda as presented or as amended.
Thank you. So with that addition of number 6.5 for the capital update, that's all the items we have. So I will call the question then. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thanks, everyone. We did have scheduled this evening an open forum item, and I see no one joining us in the gallery. Do we have those individuals online at this time, Coordinator Bellabono? Not at this time?
No, not
Okay.
at this time.
Okay. Bit of an unusual situation, but to try and be respectful of their efforts, I think that we will give them an opportunity to perhaps join us later, and we will continue on through that item as opposed to discussing it without them being in presence, unless someone has a problem with that. I think that would be the fair thing to do. There perhaps there's some technical difficulties if they're joining us electronically or they just haven't gotten here, whatever the case may be, time thing. Which would take us down to our requests for decision. If you don't mind, Director Thompson, we could move into item 6.1, the offsite levy stakeholder consultation strategy. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, Council. The City of Lacombe, along with its comparators, utilize offset levies to distribute the capital cost of eligible infrastructure between new development and the existing tax base. Offset levies are regulated by the MGA and their own offset levy regulation, which requires municipalities that wish to apply offset levies to new developments to do so through the passage of an MGA-compliant bylaw. In Lacombe, the latest iteration of offset levies is outlined in Bylaw 387, which was established in 2013 and is due now for an update. Tonight, administration is updating council on the proposed changes to the offset levies projects, benefiting areas and rates, and is seeking council's endorsement to proceed with the proposed public consultation plan. This work is included in the city's tactical plan to support council's strategic goal to manage the city in a fiscally responsible manner. The proposed 2023 offset levy update represents a significant change in levy rates for Lacombe. The rates increase between 10 and 350%, with the average rate rising by 46%. Despite this increase, the updated levies are still 14% lower than the average levies of our central Alberta comparators. The increase in Lacombe is attributed to the addition of a new asset class called facilities, for which Lacombe, that means the new fire hall, which is now eligible by the Municipal Government Act, increased construction costs overall, and new projects identified in updated infrastructure master plans to support growth. The request for decision report includes a summary of the forthcoming recommended changes to the offset levy bylaw. The report also includes a web map link that allows council and the public to click on various benefiting areas within Lacombe and view a data sheet with a detailed list of projects that are proposed to be included in that area's offset levy rate, along with the proposed offset levy rate itself. It is important to note that for those not familiar with them, offset levy rates are charged to new developments at the time of development, i.e. just before construction typically, and are not required to be paid by affected landowners or developers before that. The bylaw ensures developers and the city know the rates upfront for planning purposes. An often cited concern with offset levy rates is the impact that rate may have on a developer's decision to invest in a community. For this reason, administration reviewed the average 10-year growth rate of several of Lacombe's comparators and found no correlation between the offset levy rate of that community and their growth rate. For example, Cochrane has the highest offset levy rate, but still obtained the third highest growth rate. Olds has the lowest offset levy rate by far, but only the sixth lowest growth rate. And similarly, Blackfalds has the highest growth rate and is right in the middle with its offset levy rate. This led administration to conclude that while offset levies do play a role in development decisions, developers consider many other factors too. In the consultation plan, administration is recommending includes 4 major stakeholder groups in addition to the general public. Landowners of benefiting areas in Lacombe County and local developers will receive a letter inviting them to schedule one-on-one meetings with myself and Manager Mitchell to discuss the proposed changes and receive their feedback. The aim of these one-on-one meetings is consultation. Local realtors and industry groups will receive a letter advising them of the proposed changes to Lacombe's offset levy rates. The letter will highlight the web map and provide avenues to provide feedback. The city will accommodate one-on-one meetings upon requests, but landowners and local developers will be prioritized. In addition, the city will post about the consultation plan on the city's social media channels. Administration will summarize the feedback and present it to council in January of 2023, along with the proposed updated offset levy bylaw for first reading. Tonight, administration recommends council direct it to proceed with the proposed public consultation plan before presenting the offset levy bylaw for first reading. In this way, council and administration can consider the public's feedback in the finalization of that bylaw and their decision making. However, council may alternatively direct administration to prepare the bylaw for a first reading before proceeding with stakeholder consultation. And council has the option to provide different direction to administration at its discretion. This time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Dallas, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess it wasn't so much a question. I just appreciate that map that was provided and the information on it. It was helpful and easy to use, and I enjoyed that. So thank you for whoever created that and has provided that for the public to use. And then I guess, yeah, you've addressed it in your initial things. My biggest concern was finding out whether or not comparative communities and the rates, but if the information isn't showing high relevance, then yeah, I appreciate this and looking forward to seeing it go further.
Excuse me, this is one of those items that's kind of difficult for the majority of our viewers to really get a grasp of. And when they start seeing some of these rates and the differential from 10 to 350%, it can be quite alarming. But what would be some concrete examples? Do we have a rough idea of say how much this would add to perhaps the price of a residential, an average residential home lot or an acre of commercial land overall? Do we have a rough estimate for that kind of thing? I think that might just put it in terms that more people are apt to understand, as opposed to what appears to be on the surface a fairly massive increase.
So the answer is no, I don't have that, the number in front of me now. The direct correlation between an offset levy rate and the final house price does kind of flow through the business of the development business. And so depending on how the developer themselves is factoring in that offset levy rate, ultimately is determining the final cost. But that's certainly feedback that I can take back, Mayor Creasy, and provide to council the next time we come forward with an offset levy update.
Wonderful. And just to be certain, I don't think we need to muddy the waters with housing prices, but just with the even just the lot cost. Just, I think that puts it in terms that people can perhaps better understand. CAO Gowdy.
Excuse me. It's not really possible to narrow it down to an exact science, but Director Thompson and I were having this discussion right before the meeting. I would say that in terms of the overall cost, it is passed through on a pretty close to one-to-one basis. For an idea of how it would affect developers here in Lacombe, though, you could look to our municipal development plan targets, the minimum of 15 units per hectare. That's where it kind of gets difficult, as you say, well, assuming those are all single family lots, then you can just divide by 15, the differential, and that's what it would mean for the lots. But a savvy developer and our MVP requirements will lead to a mix of housing types where someone might choose to recoup different amounts of that cost in an R6 lot if they might have it, or disperse it amongst some choice lots overlooking a lake, that kind of thing. So I think your best mindset would be divide the differential by 15. That's what you would add if it was purely single family lots being developed in that area.
Thank you for that additional information. Councillor Ross.
I think, Mayor Creasy, I'll just make the motion that council directs administration to proceed with the proposed public consultation plan before presenting the offsite levy bylaw for first reading.
Thank you. Anything additional? Councillor Kotick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So, as Councillor Dallas had alluded to, I'm glad you've given some comparators from other communities. I was a little nervous with the significant increase, what that would look like. I guess I'll wait to see what developers say and so forth. But I'm assuming that some of these increases, there is a chance they could come down again, or, you know, or not, or are we just tied to these numbers for right now? Or is it depending on what kind of feedback we get?
Certainly as administration, we're open to feedback. And what we want to do with developers is lay out our process and be as transparent as we can with how we developed and came to these rates. And based on the development community's feedback, we expect that there may be some arguments and why some of our assumptions could be adjusted. And with that, we would, consider adjusting our rates accordingly and finalize them for first reading for council's consideration. There are some assumptions in the distribution of whether the taxpayer or the developer, like what percent of a project should be borne by either group. Those will be transparent with what those numbers are. But there is, let's say, room for council to influence that if there was a desire to shift that benefit to either party. And so certainly when we bring the bylaw forward, it'll include a detailed list of all the offset levies and how we are breaking them down to each benefiting area and to which group, taxpayer or developer.
Chief Cowdy, go ahead.
So by way of example, when the previous offset levy bylaw was brought in, council chose to step into that rate, going from 70 to 85 to 100% in a 3-year period, I think, something along those lines. And you could look at, one of the areas you could be challenged perhaps by a savvy developer would be if he said, well, I think the price you have on this project that greatly impacts my area, a road or a specific piece of infrastructure, is grossly overestimated. But it would be pretty hard to challenge the numbers once we've gone through the process that we have, without there being a significant error. And we've had a lot of eyes on it, so I'm fairly confident it will be more of a council strategic decision, not challenges based on the process.
Councillor Ghana, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Just as a follow-up, I'm just, like, I look at benefiting, table 4 is the table I'm looking at. And benefiting area number 3, for example, sees a significant increase. Like, what's that attributed to mostly? Like, there are services just to the south of that. So I'm thinking, well, why is that? I mean, I can see an area that doesn't have any services nearby seeing such a significant increase, but why is it that somewhere like that one, I don't quite understand why the increase is as significant as it is.
Looks like Director Thompson has an answer for you.
Well, I could speak more generally and then take note and provide a specific answer on Area 3 in the future. We did reallocate some of the existing projects to different benefiting areas. And so, for example, reservoirs, I believe, was one where it got reallocated. And so in previous iterations of the bylaw, the cost of new reservoirs were borne only by certain benefiting areas. And so they saw it significant. They were bearing most of the price there, most of the development allocation. And so with this new bylaw or new reallocation, we are reallocating some major projects like that to a wider benefiting area. And that's based on our infrastructure master planning and having a different lens in which we're reviewing some of these projects that have a broader benefit to the whole community. And so we're saying if there's a broader benefit to the whole community, then more than a few benefiting areas should contribute to those costs. And so that could be one of the reasons why Area 3 is seeing a change, but certainly we can draw a comparison for you and council.
Director Thompson, is that the same rationale that we could suggest as that play with the minimum rate in 2013 was for $18,800, more or less? And I expect that applied to extremely little property within the city boundaries. I think that's the one that's throwing the numbers out so bad to account for the 350% increase. So is it safe to say that the vast majority of the properties are going to be far closer to that 10% increase than they are to the 350? To try and soften the blow when people read this.
Well, certainly when we look at the weighted average in 2013, $79,000 per hectare was the weighted average. And in the proposed rate change, it's 115. And so that's kind of weighing it against the area that represents. And so for most of the properties, that's going to be a 88% increase, not 350, but not as little as 10.
Okay. Chief Gotti?
Excuse me, sorry. I just want to reiterate what Director Thompson was saying about those. I don't know for sure about Area 13, and I have no doubt he's going to check it out and get back to us. Area 13, I know was one, and I expect Area 3 will be one that are changing due to that factor, which Director Thompson explained. But it's specifically with respect to water reservoirs is the biggest change. There's a change with arterial roads that's fairly significant as well, but the water reservoirs are the ones where you see those big jumps from the very low rates to around that 80,000 rate. And the reason there is a change in philosophy and circumstance, which I will explain. In the past, the city of Lacombe's reservoirs were tied to specific pressure zones. There's a high pressure zone and there's a low pressure zone. There wasn't much interface between the two. So there was a geographic component to the placement of water reservoirs. And so we had a philosophy at that time in the first bylaw that the area near the reservoir will kind of draw a circle, simplistically, draw a circle around this reservoir and pump house. That's the area that will pay and benefit from that pump house. So it's all allocated kind of to a specific zone. What we have since encountered is that we've done a number of projects to interconnect the two pressure zones through pressure reducing and sustaining valves to allow backflow. And so the pressures are not really an issue. And that's allowed us to actually extend quite a ways past where we would have expected to need new reservoir in the past. Now, the limitation is actually in reservoir capacity. So you have to have, I believe it's 2.5 days of full storage at maximum daily demand, your average day, plus enough to fight a specified fire. And it might be 2 fires actually in the city of Lacombe's case now. So you actually need, the whole reason for a new pump house is no longer the pumps in the pump house, but the reservoir storage. And so now all new development, whether it's happening here, it doesn't matter. All new development is driving the need for new reservoir storage. And so now those pieces of infrastructure get spread over all new development instead of being geographically specific. And even though that seems kind of like a minute, small deal, the cost of reservoirs being what they are and the grants available are not very good. I shouldn't say not very good. They just don't pay for a lot of the water, or of the capital costs, for water. And so that does result in a big change in, I'll let Director Thompson get us the actual information and respond at a later date. But the majority that I explored for that very reason, where I said, well, why this is so high? That is what it is. That is the reason. There is also a change in the way arterial roads are distributed, which I don't remember having as big of a significance. Do you know that in enough detail to tell us? Or
I will include that in my
Yes.
report back to council, arterial roads as well.
So we'll be sure not to forward this bit of video to Minister McIver's office, where he thinks that City of Lacombe says grants are bad. So, we knew what you meant. Thank you. Anyone else? So we do have a motion on the floor. Perhaps Coordinator Bellabono, you could just read that back so we're all on the same page. And anybody can formulate any additional questions or concerns as well.
The motion on the floor from Councillor Ross is that council directs administration to proceed with the proposed public consultation plan before presenting the offsite levy bylaw for first reading.
Very good, thank you. Does anyone have any further comment? Very good. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Thank you. Director Thompson, were we expecting any additional observers or guests for the 6.2 item Metcalf Ridge?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Yes, we were expecting Mr. Glenn Fraser, a representative of GS Communities, to join us online. Coordinator Bellabono, is Mr. Fraser logged in?
No, we don't have Mr. Fraser on the line, and it seems that also our open forum guests are having difficulty getting connected. They keep getting disconnected.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's an issue just with our open forum guests or with our team's phone number this evening. So
Okay.
our IT is looking at it right now.
Very good. Well, then, given that concern, that was specifically the reason why I asked. Perhaps we could move on to item 6.3 would be more appropriate, the Lynn Thompson accessible dock. Director Lapointe, are you prepared to move that item now? Very good. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. This evening, administration is presenting the Lacombe Fish and Game Association's Community Builder Partnership Grant application for Council's consideration. As you may recall, Lacombe Fish and Game presented at a joint council meeting earlier this year. At that presentation, they shared 3 visions for the accessible dock project and mentioned they would be pursuing a community facility enhancement program funding grant from the province in support of the initiative. Administration later worked with the Lacombe Fish and Game to facilitate an application to the city's Community Builder Partnership Grant. The aim of the project is to provide an expanded, fully accessible and pedestrian-friendly fishing dock at the Len Thompson Fish Pond, home of the world's largest fishing lure. Construction would commence in February of 2023 with an estimated opening of June of the same year. This new amenity will continue to grow the fish pond as a regional and provincial destination of choice. The applicant was able to verify that not only has the province committed $80,000 to the project, but that the Lacombe Fish and Game, Team Jigger, and Len Thompson fishing lures are also confirmed at the amounts presented in the project funding model. The Lacombe District Recreation Parks and Culture Board reviewed the Lacombe Fish and Game Community Builder Partnership Grant application and recommended it for approval at their September 20th, 2022 meeting. The application complies with the Community Builder Partnership Policy in that the city will provide no more than 25% of the funding for the project. Administration is recommending that council approve a grant of $75,000 from the Community Builder Partnership Fund to the Lacombe Fish and Game Association for their accessible fishing dock project. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. I guess I just want to be clear. We do have a process in place to discuss items with our neighbors at Lacombe County. And there's a rather detailed process. I see in our notes, however, there was a letter from the Reeve expressing interest in this item. Is that correct? CEO Gowdy?
That is correct. You did actually receive a presentation on this through that process. Although I will also note, this actually is below the threshold that's noted for requirement to trigger that process. It just came up at the same time as you were reviewing, I believe, the Athletic Park Association's project. And so we felt it was suitable to add to the agenda. But it has gone through that process, even though that is above and beyond your minimum standard.
Very good. No, I appreciate that pointing out because I didn't want there to be any misunderstandings that we were somehow circumventing that agreement that was done in good faith with the county. So on a couple of counts there, and by having that written submission from the Reeve, I would suggest that they are on board with it as well. So who'd like to open? Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think this is a tremendous project. And the accessible part of it is one of the main features of this dock and will allow everybody to have access to that. And as we continue to improve the area and get a walking path across the highway and the railway and in front of all those businesses to access that facility, I think it'll be terrific. So I'm willing to make the motion now that council approves a grant of $75,000 from the Community Builder Partnership Fund to the Lacombe Fish and Game Association for their accessible fishing dock project.
Thank you. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. No, I just want to thank you, Mayor Creasy, for bringing up the points about Lacombe County. I don't want to, invariably, one of us has to pass this first. But I did want to I'm glad you brought that up. I don't want to step on any of their toes or, because, we're kind of trying to do this jointly, but as you alluded to, I'm sure they'll on board, and I'm certainly on board as Councillor Gullickson has made the motion.
No, and I appreciate that, even though it is under the minimum, it's still a significant amount of money, and I think that's would be the reasonable thing to do, that we would at least acknowledge certainly our interest, and by receiving that letter, the county has done so as well. Yeah, I don't know if we'll see other lights on. From my perspective, it's pretty nice to see some nonprofits involved, both the Lacombe Fish and Game Association and Team Jigger, as well as business with Thompson fishing lures on board, and then various government entities too. So I'm certainly in favor of this, as I was before. Just make sure everybody understands I am no longer on the executive of the Lacombe Fish and Game Association, which I couldn't have said that for the previous 30 some years. So absolutely, I still wholeheartedly endorse the work that they do, but I am not in any position to influence or benefit this particular item. So just want to make that clear. Anyone else? With respect to Councillor Gullickson's motion, and all those in favor? And I didn't see everybody's hand, so I'll ask any opposed. That was unanimous. Thanks, everyone. I expect we will have one very excited and grateful service group when they hear that news. Chief Gowdy, bylaw 78, the Municipal Police Commission bylaw, item 6.4. We can move into that item, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. For you this evening is a potential process for the review of the Municipal Police Commission bylaw, which is a requirement under the existing Police Act, which was passed in, I believe, 1988. Following the passage of the Police Act, the city adopted a new Municipal Police Commission bylaw as required by the Act. And it's been amended a number of times since. And I list the number of amendments there, or the dates of the amendments. So the process that I'm proposing, because this is a bylaw which greatly affects one of your very important community partners, the Municipal Police Commission, I wanted to get your endorsement, input on what an appropriate engagement protocol would be. So I have laid it out there as a recommended review process, where essentially you'll receive a presentation on the existing Police Commission bylaw. We'll have discussion, and then potentially at your discretion, you'll move into camera to discuss questions or concerns that you might have with the current bylaw. And you can include other parties such as the Lacombe Police Commission in that in-camera session to your discretion, and are able to include them for a portion or not a portion, or the whole thing as you see fit. After that presentation, we'll request feedback on the current bylaw from a number of agencies as outlined there, the Police Commission, the Police Service, and of course yourselves and anyone else that council would like. You could include, for example, the Police Service members or the Police Association representatives. Then once received, administration and council's representative on the Police Commission, which is currently Councillor Hoekstra, pending an organizational meeting in October, it will be the same once this is engaged, would meet with the two groups to discuss their input on specific areas of the bylaw. Council would then receive an in-camera request for a decision, requesting direction on any relevant decision points. We would draft a bylaw reflecting that council direction, and we would share that with the Police Commission. And I've highlighted the Police Service. It wouldn't be the general police service, it would be the chief for comment. Concurrently, the draft bylaw would be shared, and it would be kind of an iterative process. We would have already had some legal counsel depending on the potential changes that council is reviewing ahead of that time. Then you would receive a draft bylaw for your consideration for first reading, and it would pass through the normal bylaw procedures from there. So we've outlined a process that we expect would take approximately 6 months, depending, of course, on getting input back and legal counsel and that sort of thing. The fly in the ointment, as it were, is that there is a Police Act review underway, and it is likely in my mind that all police commission bylaws will need to be reviewed to some degree following a new police act being adopted by the province. So there is some question in my mind to say, and the commission's mind, I should say, and the commission has brought this point up. See, unfortunately, Councillor Hoekstra isn't here, but to say, well, given that it's been in place essentially since 1988, is waiting another, the province has recently stated, you know, oh yeah, it could be ready this fall. I would be very surprised to see the Police Act adopted by the province prior to maybe next year would be hopeful even. But it does seem imminent. They have completed their consultation. The draft legislation allegedly is ready for review. And when I say allegedly, I believe that it is ready for review. They did say if it's seen as a priority upon the new provincial leader coming in, then it could be adopted this fall. So I'll leave that to you to balance those factors. My recommendation is to wait and give us direction to bring this back in a year's time to see if nothing's happened since then, to make another decision. But it does seem like engaging these external groups, having legal reviews, and diverting attention to a comprehensive review, the police commission bylaw right now, I think there is a high likelihood of redoing that work within 3 years.
Thank you, CEO Gowdy. Have you heard from the police commission? Are there any specific items with respect to that legislation that are of concern to them right now that we need to address? Or did they express it? I'm sorry, for our bylaw that need to be addressed at this time, or no?
You know, they did provide me some general input approximately 6 months ago. And I have to admit, I did not go through it within the last week to prepare for this. I should have, but there was nothing that stood out. There's some specific language around appointments, discipline, and appointment of police service members that they had some comment on. They were looking for a little more latitude in the way performance could be managed amongst the police association, I believe. Beyond that, there was nothing that jumps out as urgent.
Imminent, okay. Very good. I mean, given the
Land
last
Fraser.
update was in 2016. I mean,
Is
myself, I
now
don't
joining.
think that another period of time, up to a year or something, is going to be disruptive by any stretch of the imagination, but perhaps council has a different opinion. Councillor Connick?
Yeah, I know. I was just gonna suggest I don't see any point in opening this can of worms until we find out what the Alberta Police Act is. I mean, I hate to spend all that time and resource and energy reviewing the bylaw only to find out that we have to do it all over again. I mean, so to that end, I'm actually prepared to make the motion that council directs administration to defer the review of the Municipal Police Commission bylaw until the province of Alberta has completed its review of the Alberta Police Act.
Very good so far as the deferment, and then we'll do it, another one for the actual process. Was everybody pretty much on board with that? Okay. So for that motion then, does anybody wish to speak further on it? And I will call the question. All those in favor? I see none opposed. And for the other portion of it, Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just for clarification, that first one is just accepting the process, but obviously the timeline would be deferred because we're already have said that. So therefore, I would move that council endorse the proposed process to review the Municipal Police Commission bylaw.
Thank you. And did anyone have anything additional questions or concerns on that motion? Very good. All those in favor? And that is unanimous as well. I believe that we had someone join us electronically. Coordinator Bellabono,
Yes, I believe
for which item is that?
would be for 6.2 Metcalf Ridge Phase 1B pilot. It is Glenn Fraser on the line.
Very good. Appreciate that. Director Thompson, let's move back into the request for decision number 6.2 Metcalf Ridge Phase 1B pilot.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. And as Coordinator Bellabono was confirmed, Glenn Fraser is logged in. And while he is not presenting on this item, he is available for council if they have any questions, and will help me answer any questions that council has regarding their specific proposal. Starting in 2022, GS Communities, developer of Metcalf Ridge, proposes to develop a small 11-lot residential phase in Metcalf Ridge, Phase 1B, that involves the consolidation of several existing R1 lots into wider lots for single-family homes. According to GS Communities, they will need to amend the Metcalf Ridge outline plan to either reallocate density in Metcalf Ridge to meet or exceed the original density target, or provide additional amenities to Metcalf Ridge per the municipal development plan. If they don't continue with that lot product, they are not required to amend the outline plan at this time. Tonight, administration recommends council endorse the Metcalf Ridge Phase 1B density deviation pilot as proposed.
Thank you, Director Thompson. One unit, as I was reading through my notes on this item, it just helped for clarification. So on this particular area was originally going to be 18 lots. It's down to consolidated basically to 11. Yet the density goes from 14.95 units per hectare to 14.75 units per hectare. So is that to suggest that is over the entire Metcalf Ridge then? Because that seems like a very insignificant change when it accounts for, I don't know, 40% or so of the lots in this particular phase.
That is correct, Mayor Creasy. The density difference that I highlighted was on Metcalf Ridge overall, and that includes the mix of housing types that are proposed and included in the outline plan, higher density development and single family home development together.
Very good. And specifically on this test area, the density of that is what?
I don't have the exact number in front of me, Mayor Creasy. but I could quickly do some math here and return back to.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think this is great to have some options. It's not very often we've had some of the bigger lots in a few areas of the city, but I would strongly recommend and support this motion to be that council endorses the Metcalf Ridge Phase 1B density deviation pilot as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Again, for myself, I guess this would be a problem if this were successful and the developer wanted to do this on the entire site or was somehow eligible to, that would be a different story. But given that requires some additional public consultation and whatnot through the IDP, I have no problem with permitting this particular area. Obviously, the developer feels there's a market, a need for this type of product in here with the what basically boils down to an additional garage, from my understanding. And I certainly have no problem with it myself, but Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. No, I support this as well. As Councillor Ross alluded to, it's great to have some more options, especially in my line of work. I'll hear a lot of times, so people will come to me and say, well, where can I need a bigger lot. And invariably the only bigger lots you can get is if you happen to snatch one downtown that's up for redevelopment or whatever the case may be. So I think this is terrific because I think clearly they've identified a need for this. And I think that's borne out by what I've seen as well, that there are people looking to build new on a nice big lot, and invariably there aren't many choices. So I think it's terrific.
Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I also agree that this is a great idea, especially on a little project like this. Are there options for us to recover the lost revenue by a way of taxation on the frontage?
What a great question. But no, essentially. That actually the province would have to consider a change. This is something I often talk about, actually. So right now, as council, you're allowed to, there's subclasses in non-residential property. So there's residential property and then there's non-residential. And you set a mill rate for each one. And in non-residential, there's subclasses that you can do that would potentially apply different rates. If they allowed you to do the same thing in residential, to say low density, high density, medium density, and apply a different mill rate, then the whole problem of urban sprawl goes away. You just apply a higher tax rate to really low density development. And I would argue that many people looking for this type of product would be happy to pay a slightly higher, a slight premium to have the lot that they really want. But it has never come to be. Right now, Director Thompson and I have talked about the idea of, you see some municipalities doing it, a stormwater utility. And it's too much work actually to do for a community the size of Lacombe, but that would be one way that you could potentially manage these density issues, that you could say, well, we'll structure the stormwater utility that it's an area basis, and so you'll apply a slightly higher rate to the really low density development, or it'd be a higher rate but a larger area, or sorry, a lower rate but a higher area. So that is one level of support I would have for a stormwater utility, but there is no real way to recover the lost revenue, the foregone revenue from a low assessment density in the current legislative framework.
However, the hard costs for facilities are included in the offsite levy, so there is that element as well. But for the specific ongoing costs you're talking about, there really is no way to recoup that.
Yeah, and the ongoing costs that are associated with low density development are often linear costs. So things like recreation facilities or fire services, well, actually fire services, yes, there's a geographic component, but it's not all services that are disproportionately carried by high density development. Some are borne evenly. The linear idea you had would also be really good, like a frontage type thing, but it's not available either.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I don't see much of an issue with this current proposal. My only concern is if it comes up again and the neighborhood has to continue to adjust certain areas to increase the density to make the adjustments so that the numbers are correct. I feel like what happens then is you become two very distinct neighborhoods with typically the higher density becoming more rental and less owned property instead of be integrated with the way the per units is set up right now. But as it stands right now, I'm willing to accept this.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I mean, yeah, I definitely read this memo and accept the recommendation of administration. But I do have concerns about this being a little bit of a slippery slope because we do know that these larger lots, they're not carrying the same burden as lower ones when it comes to tax rates. So we already know that it's outlined in this memo. I guess going forward, the phases that are shown here, 1A, 1B, 1C, is that the extent of the entire Metcalf subdivision as far as this developer is concerned, or there is more? So there's a lot more room here to make up that space, because I guess what my final analysis is, I really do want to see this area be held to the expectation that we have now, and by making this allowance, I'm willing to support it with the understanding that it will be absorbed at a future date. So I'm not sure how long this area will take to develop out. I hope this does help spur in a little bit of that. But I just do want this to be kind of pocketed and remembered, you know, a caveat that that this was done at one time and not to expect this to be continued, because I would have a hard time supporting that. So, thank you.
Thank you. We do have a motion before us, do we not? Could you read it back to us, please, Coordinator Bellabono?
So the motion on the floor by Councillor Ross is that council endorses the Metcalf Ridge Phase 1B density deviation pilot as proposed.
Thank you. I wasn't sure that when Councillor Gullickson brought up the idea of taxation differential, we didn't have an IT glitch, because that blue icon there flickered quite a bit. Any additional comments? All those in favor? That is unanimous. I believe that takes us down to the item that was added for request for decision by CAO Gowdy regarding the capital project update. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. And I seem to have misplaced my copy of. Appreciate it, Councillor Ross. I'm sorry. Thank you. So we have provided a capital project update. Councillor Connick had asked for a couple of specific updates. Essentially, I won't go through the ones that are green unless you have questions at the end, and then I can. But I will go through the yellows and reds. So yellow means projects may not achieve one element, either scope, budget, or timeline. And there's additional explanation. Red means more than one element may not be achieved. That's not a guarantee that they won't, but that's where we're seeing challenges. So the first one is City Hall renovations and furniture. Essentially, simplistically, we completed a design and are concerned that the original budget actually may not be a good investment, may not be worth going ahead with. And so we wanted to look at something that would be a little, in our opinion, better value. So we have created an additional option, which we will bring to council to say, this is what can be done within the original budget. And do you want to proceed? And so we'll be behind target there, time wise. But you'll see in October. We're planning for the second meeting in October to bring you those two options. The Lacombe Athletic Park upgrades, that is delayed. I don't believe it will go this year. And they are waiting to hear from the Community Facility Enhancement Program on their grant application. The 45th Street pedestrian bridge over Wolf Creek, which I believe is one of the specific items Councillor Connick had asked about, has been delayed due to environmental approvals, which are behind. And it appears we are releasing a design build RFP in October now that we have those in place. Construction cannot occur between September and March, so it will begin in March of 2023. The pedestrian path from Woodland Drive to Thompson Drive, we are just waiting for a Canadian Pacific Rail to obtain their approval on the proposed design. I would say that will be a 2023 project, very likely in my mind. The repair of 76th Street, we did notice some minor movement that had occurred between 2021 and 2022. So rather than pave over, we are waiting for some further consolidation, and it's not a high volume road at this time. And we just want to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And so when 76th Street is extended, which could be 2023, pending the developer's completion of the council endorsed triggers for the extension of that road, then we would finish the paving and make sure that it is completed its movement at this time. The R4 district review, we have been shorthanded a bit in the planning and development department at times in the year. And so we are a bit behind on that. The final report is in progress and it'll come later this fall, likely first meeting in November. Is there any other items? This is not a complete and exhaustive list of all capital projects that are underway, but we did try to capture the ones from the division that we thought were noteworthy or that there might be questions. Of course, we're prepared to answer anything else you may have.
Thank you. Given that this update, which is appreciated, by the way, came about after the agenda was produced, I believe, and this is a public meeting, I appreciate you trying to save time, but I'm going to have you just read the on target as planned green items as a list for anybody watching, so they can see that the vast majority of them, in fact, are on target.
I appreciate that opportunity. So projects that are on target or completed include the AC unit for City Hall's server room, replacement of a fire command vehicle, replacement and upgrades of various information communication technology, repairs to the Crana Lake Trail, LMC acoustic improvements in the main room there, playground replacements at the lakes and what was the other one? Hearthstone, thank you. The pool basin, and actually I did want to note there that we have added an unbudgeted addition that totaled nearly $100,000 for replacement of the steel lockers, which had rusted through. We did some analysis and determined that there was sufficient budget within that division that we would be able to absorb this in the overall divisional budget. And so with the closure, we have gone ahead with those plastic locker replacements. The Len Thompson Fish Pond Trail, as well as the paving. Is that listed here? Paving work, actually. Okay. Yes, thank you. And the paving associated with Len Thompson and 55th Avenue. 55th Avenue? Sorry, 45th. CP's update to Wolf Creek Drive crossing, which is one of the requirements for whistle cessation application, is planned to be complete by the end of October. So that is exciting. And the Public Works Facility, the design build RFP is on track to be issued in October. And of course, I'm sure you've noticed that there's work going on there already. because we have secured a contractor to complete the site preparation. So a lot of the dirt work is going ahead right now. That is a local contractor that was working in the area. So thank you again for the opportunity to highlight the green on track projects.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that as well. Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. And just for my own, I know we talked about this, but I want to just clarify that that pedestrian bridge on 45th will be on the east side of 45th, correct?
Yes, I believe that is the plan, to put it on the east side of that road. Although due to these environmental approvals, I'll have to follow up with Manager Mitchell and just confirm that hasn't changed, which side of the road it's on. But that was certainly the plan the last time I connected with Manager Mitchell. She's back in the office this week, and I'll connect with her and confirm that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I was just thinking for future sidewalk development, if we carry that through all the way to, which I think we should one day do, all the way to Highway 12, it just makes sense that it's on the east side because then you can join up Iron Wolf and Mackenzie. If I may, Mayor Creasy, just one other thing. So were we not doing a bit of repaving on 12 between where we stopped at downtown and where we stopped just east of 58th, or am I thinking something different?
Councillor Conick, the capital programming did include paving kind of closer to the, on Highway 12, closer to the movie theater east of the tracks. And so there's a section of repaving that occurred kind of more on the eastern side of Highway 12.
Anyone else? Any questions on the capital project updates? Coordinator Belbono?
It's not a question, just to let council know that the RFI was posted on our website 3 hours ago prior to the meeting, so the public can go on and look at it. Wonderful.
Appreciate that. We should probably make it official by having a motion to accept this for information. Councillor Conick?
I would certainly be prepared to make that motion that we accept the capital project update as information. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone else? All those in favor? That is unanimously approved as well. So a little bit of a unique situation. We had pretty specific guidelines for our open forum process. Bit of a hiccup this evening, perhaps, and I'm going to suggest that it perhaps be postponed to a later meeting unless I hear differently. Somehow I find it odd for any individual or group, in this case, to go through the work of preparing and then not attend. So obviously something's went amiss. And I don't know that it would be fair for us to render a decision on that without them being present. Does that seem like a reasonable? Are there any legal implications for something like this, CAO Gowdy?
No, decisions aren't usually rendered during open forum presentations anyway, but we can definitely connect with the presenter and see if we're able to resolve the issue to save her the time or have her present at a future meeting.
Very good. I think while I'm got my page turned to the correct location here, I would just make everyone aware of our upcoming meetings. On Tuesday, October the 11th is our regular council meeting here at City Hall at 5:30 p.m. And then a couple of weeks afterwards on Monday, October 24th is our organizational meeting and our regular council meeting at 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers as well. And I do not intend to be here at the organizational regular meeting on October 24th from a prior commitment for some personal time. So our current deputy mayor, who is Councillor Gullickson, I believe. That's correct. Very good. We'll be chairing that meeting, and thank you for that, Councillor Gullickson. So we did jump around the agenda a little bit to accommodate some changes this evening. Was there anything that I have perhaps left out? I don't believe we had any in-camera items this evening. So it looks like to me that is pretty much it. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Given that, I would make the motion that we would adjourn.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All those in favor? Very good. 6:37, that's got to be awfully close to